Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to those that are new. This is one of the pieces that was highly rated by the people that checked out the live stream a couple of days ago. So this was number 1 out of all the options that I had people vote on. And I can see why. This was actually the one that I was most hopeful people would vote for, so I'm glad it came in second place after that sand shot absolute nightmare. So you can see that it's actually a bit of a dark piece, so it's a little bit of a grey. It's not a black opal by any means, but it is a bit of a darker Coober Pedy, which is always an interesting piece. And like I said in the previous video, just because of the shape and size of it, I do want to try to get a nice pendant stone out of this. There's a huge chunk out the top here. Well, it'll probably be the bottom for reasons I'll get into later, but out of this section of the opal here, there's a huge bite of sand, which is a little disappointing. It looks like it goes in quite a distance, so we could end up losing quite a lot of that bottom edge. The colour bar itself is quite large. The whole piece is fairly rough. I'll give it a quick dunk in some water, help us see it a little bit better. So you can see here, the colour bar goes all the way through on this side, from almost top to bottom. There's only about 2 mils at the top there, that doesn't get much, and a little bit over here. It's a little bit of an undulating bar, so it kind of fits this curve of the outer edge that you can see if I hold it on this angle. It just follows that outer edge. So it's formed a little bit strangely, but I think that is just potential for an even more interesting pendant piece. The reason I love opal so much is that because it's so unique, and the change in shape is also part of that uniqueness. Now, unfortunately, that beautiful colour you see from this side is not quite the same over here, so it's just starting to come through here in the centre. So there's a good chance that this top corner here is pretty much just dead potch, and this is that sandy part. So we could have a bit of a curved shape across here, in which case the pendant might actually have this as its face. So there's going to be a lot of thinking in this piece. Also, there's a big chunk of sand there that I think does go in pretty deep. So I think the stone is actually taking out that corner and taking out this corner here. So we'll end up with a bit of a strange shape here, which, I don't know, we can't be too disappointed yet, so we're just gonna have to chuck it on the cutting block and see how it goes. But that's what I'm guessing just from an initial read. There's sand that goes through to here. There's no colour in this corner. I'm sure the opal is formed somehow like this, which is still a nice, interesting pendant piece shape. So without further ado, let's get into it. Well, what can I say? Sometimes you can just read it. So I was basically spot on with the fact that the sand both cuts in these kind of angles, so all we're left with is this center section here. This stuff on the surface I thought was a little shallower, but it doesn't matter because we're only just getting onto the color bar now, and I think these will be eliminated by the time I get there. And like we said, it's pretty damn thick. So you can see here that opaque white is still colorless, so I've got to take out that. And that should get rid of most of these. Some of the small ones that I saw on the face were actually connected to that big bits of sand. So you saw me find some channels here, and I cut through the first one, cut through the second one. But yeah, it's pretty much... There's going to be a little bit of color over here that I can see that's going to get lost. Just there, you can see it glistening. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I'm not going to grind that back though. I'm just going to slice across here. I won't do that on camera because that's a bit boring. But I basically just slice this tail bit off. I'll just grind that away. That could almost get chipped away with my fingers, but that'll come off. And then I'll take off this until those inclusions are taken out. And we'll basically start attacking it with the Nova tips. So off camera, I'll quickly just cut off those bits and grind a little bit further at this to get it down, and then I'll be back with the Nova tips and we will see what kind of piece we can get out of this. Thought I'd jump back in quickly just to show you what it looks like now that I've cut off those added little bits. There is one piece way over here, so there is one piece here that I'm saving. It's got a bit of colour in it. Probably only good for a chip jar really, just because those inclusions are still going in fairly deep, but it does have some colour on it, so you know what? Kind of like those birds that pick up shiny objects. I'm gonna just keep that just because it's got something in it, and who knows when you need just a tiny little piece. I don't know, maybe I can use it for an inlay ring or something like that. If I get enough of that stuff, you could actually do something with it. But anyway, back to this piece. I don't know why, but I am really loving the shape that it's ended up as. So just following the inclusions and getting rid of them, I've flattened off both the top and the bottom so it looks really nice. Now doing that with a rotary tool, a Dremel, is really tough. It is really tough to get something. I want to get a flat lap to do this kind of thing. Instead I used a fairly large flat disc. Well, not disc, but bit. I'll just quickly bring it in. So this one here. If you've got an Opal small enough, that flat surface can be used pretty well. It's dried up now, so there's a bit of powder. Not a fan of that. Should have washed it. But yeah, that flat side can actually be used to flatten your surfaces of Opal. If you've got a rotary tool, you'll know how hard it is to get a really nice flat surface for a doublet. Now, we're not doubleting this. It is dry, so you're not seeing much of the colour, but if I zoom in real close, you can see how scuffed it is because that bit goes around circular, so it's got a lot of circular cutting marks. There is inclusions up here that I still want to get rid of, but the Nova bit can get rid of that. So even dry, look at that colour leaping through. That's awesome. Awesome to see. And this corner over here has got a bit of an inclusion, but it's also a bit square, and I'm not a huge fan, so that'll get rounded off anyway. But this shape, I don't know why. I don't think I've ever cut anything this shape before, but I'm actually a huge fan of it. I'm not sure why. I should hate it. It's not a typical shape. But I reckon this could be... I've got plans for it already, basically. So I'm not going to change the shape too much. As I said, that corner's too sharp. It's going to get rounded. It'll get rid of that inclusion. This top edge will get rounded a little bit more. Get rid of those inclusions. That's not really inclusion, that's just a bit of powder that's been put into a groove, so it's really just getting rid of those with a finer grit. So that'll start with the Nova tips, and yeah, it's really nice. I'm not sure the carat weight of it, but it's still got quite a lot of the original shape and size, minus those inclusions. And if I give it a quick dunk in water, you can see this end here has a little bit more colour than the other end on this side. It's not the most colourful thing ever, Not the highest quality piece of Coober Pedy in the world, but it is pretty nice. And it'll get a lot better once this really aggressive cutting mark, even the water doesn't cover it up properly. You can see here it's covered it well, but it's already drying over that side. But yeah, this side's got some nice colour all the way through, including the end, which has a lot of red and blue. This side, I would probably say, is the back side, even though its bottom end here is pretty colourful. The top end is a little bit flat, it's got a bit of a purple and a bit of green, but this one's just more consistently got colour over it. But we're going to treat it like it's a double-sided stone, though double-sided doesn't increase the value of a piece all that much. It's not like double-sided means double the price. Keep that in mind when you're doing your cutting. Sometimes it is better just to go for one really good side, but in this case we've got 3mm plus of opal here, and we're going to do both sides, and I need it to have both sides done because I've got something planned for it and I need both sides. So yeah, time to attack this with the Nova tips, going from black all the way through to rose. And then we'll Cerium Oxide it. And we're done. Sometimes you just get a stone that is actually distracting to cut. As I was just rotating it for the polishing, I was constantly losing focus because, I don't know, I just kept seeing shiny things. The colour flashes in some of these areas are just remarkable. Don't mind the plane. Like this top part here and this part just here in the middle has some of the brightest flashes I've seen on a Coober Pedy in a while, which is pretty nice for a fairly cheap beginner's piece. This is the backside. I spent a little bit less time on it, but I still spent enough time on it to get it a nice polish. I mean, why not? No point doing half a job. In the future, I reckon it's worth dopping even something like this, because that was a hell of a struggle to hold on to. And even doing the double-sided, I could have just dopped on the backside, taken it off and given it a quick little shine up after the fact, so that at least one side was easy to polish, because it was a little bit of a nightmare. But yeah, it's an incredible piece. It's polished up really well. No major imperfections or inclusions. There's a little bit, unfortunately, in the front face, there's a little bit of a potch area just there between the two incredibly bright areas. And there's a slight bit of cloudiness just in the center of it there as well. But mainly it's just that potchy area there, which I just couldn't seem to get through, and it could have gone on forever. But yeah, amazing flash. Really distracting stone to actually try to carve. But that's it. And that all came from just that greyish piece. It hasn't turned out very dark at all, but that greyish piece of rough. Number one, the one that I wanted to do in the first place. I mean, look at that flash in between my fingers. It's slippery because it's fully polished. It's a little slippery bugger. And speaking of little, it's probably worthwhile just quickly getting a reading of how much it weighs. Alright, so a bit under 2.5 carats. Not bad. Not bad at all. We've still got that little offcut piece just over here. So there's another carat from the rough, and yeah, I mean, we lost probably, I don't know, 50% completely just due to sand and inclusions. So 50% gone there. There's another little bit there. So yeah, we've ended up with a nice 2.5 carat stone. Quite good. It's really thick too. It's a really thick piece. I could have domed it even more, but I don't think that'll be suitable for what I want it for. So always when you're cutting, keep the end product in mind. If you've got an idea for a stone that you're carving away at, make sure it's fit for that purpose. There's no point, unless you're selling it and you're just going to do a standard boring shape, there's no point going through the whole process and then realizing at the end you can't do what you wanted to do with it halfway through. So once you find a good reason to cut a certain shape, go for it. And look at that. Insane. But anyway, that'll be the end of this one. Turned out to get quite a nice gem from it, so yeah, can't complain. And I think I'm going to do one more from those options that I listed, but then we'll do another live stream and I'll give a couple more options. Maybe mix in some different types of opal. And yeah, we'll see what everyone's interested in. This was a good pick, and I think I'll do one more. I think it was number 4, but you'll see that in a future video. Catch you guys.